Welcome to The Explainer. Here are the top stories for Wednesday, January 7th, 2026, coming up on midnight Central Africa time.
Okay, let's dive right into our top story tonight. And it's a huge one, coming out of Venezuela, where a major military operation has just unfolded.
So in what is a massive escalation, U.S. forces have conducted airstrikes around the capital, Caracas. And get this, in the process, they've captured President Nicolas Maduro and the First Lady Celia Flores. This operation, which was codenamed Southern Spear, moved incredibly fast. It all kicked off on Saturday with the airstrikes and the capture. By Monday, that's just 2 days later, Maduro and Flores were already in a U.S. court pleading not guilty to charges of drug trafficking and narco-terrorism. And while all of that was happening, Delcy Rodriguez was sworn in as the new acting president back in Venezuela. Now, of course, there's a human cost to an operation like this. U.S. officials are reporting a total of 80 fatalities from the attack. The big question, though, is who were they? Well, this is where things get really interesting. When you look at the breakdown of those casualties, you can see there's a clear international dimension here. Venezuela's military announced that 24 of its security officers were killed. But here's the kicker. Cuba has confirmed the deaths of 32 of its citizens. So how's the new government in Venezuela responding? The new interim president, Delcy Rodriguez, gave a really defiant message. She invoked Maduro, calling this the Remarkable Challenge 2026, and said it's a Venezuela that refuses to surrender and will be in active resistance. And then there's the oil. Alongside all the military action, President Trump announced on social media that Venezuela is going to provide the U.S. with somewhere between 30 and 50 million barrels of oil. To put that in perspective, we're talking about a deal worth roughly $2 billion. Okay, so let's zoom out a bit. What's happening in Venezuela is part of a much wider and, frankly, sometimes contradictory U.S. foreign policy strategy that's been playing out. You're seeing this real push and pull. On one side, there's active engagement. The U.S. just helped broker talks between Syria and Israel in Paris, creating this new joint fusion mechanism for security. But on the other side, there's this major withdrawal. The administration has ordered the U.S. to pull out of 66 international organizations, including a big one, the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. And that's not all on the policy front. The U.S. State Department has just introduced a new visa bond requirement. We're talking up to $15,000 for certain visitors. This is going to affect 38 countries in total, and it's worth pointing out that a big majority of them, 24 to be exact, are African nations. I just mentioned the U.S. pulling out of that climate treaty. Well, that news lands at the same time as this new climate risk report from Germanwatch. And let me tell you, it paints a pretty bleak picture of the long-term impact of extreme weather. So let's just start with the human cost, because it is absolutely staggering. Between 1995 and 2024, the report says that more than 832,000 lives have been lost worldwide because of extreme weather events. Just let that number sink in for a second. And then you look at the economic damage. We're talking about direct losses of nearly $4.5 trillion. That's trillion with a T. It's just a mind-boggling amount of money from almost 10,000 different extreme weather events in that same period. So who's been hit the hardest by all of this? Well, the report's data is pretty clear on that. Over the long haul, the countries most consistently and severely impacted have been Dominica, Myanmar, and Honduras. And what's causing all this economic loss? Well, there are a few factors. One stands out by a mile. Storms. They're responsible for a whopping 58% of the total economic damage, totaling over $2.6 trillion. All right, let's shift gears and talk science and tech. We've got two really cool breakthroughs that could change our understanding of, well, a whole lot of things. First up is something called neuromorphic computing. Basically, it's about building computers that are modeled after the human brain. And researchers at Sandia National Labs just found that these brain-inspired computers are surprisingly awesome at solving really complex math. This could be a total game changer. And then, over at Northern Arizona University, scientists literally watched metal snowflakes form. It's pretty wild. They heated up these tiny metal particles and saw them self-assemble into these unique, complex shapes in less than 10 seconds. It's a process called emergence, and it could totally revolutionize nanotechnology. And finally, let's wrap things up with some football. The quarterfinals are all set for the Africa Cup of Nations in Morocco, and it is looking intense. I mean, just look at these matchups. We've got 8 of the continent's absolute best teams going head-to-head for a spot in the semifinals this Friday and Saturday. You've got Mali versus Senegal, Cameroon taking on the hosts Morocco. It's gonna be good.
So there you have it. A day of huge geopolitical shifts, some really sobering climate warnings, amazing scientific discoveries, and of course, some high-stakes football to look forward to.
We will be back with another bulletin in 24 hours to keep you informed. Thank you for joining us.